Renewable Energy. She's the executive director of the Climate Plus Energy Project. She has coordinated winning campaigns to protect the Kansas Renewable Portfolio Standard. And I had to look that up, but it is really cool, and she'll probably tell you about it. From special interest groups that are attacking it during 4 legislative sessions. She has the patience of Job. She's been recognized with national media attention, including MSNBC's Rachel Maddow show, is frequently invited to speak on a range of clean energy topics, including a presentation at Yale for a public forum of the C words, addressing climate change without talking about climate change, a regional perspective. She also provides expert testimony at regulatory proceedings and has been published in the Electricity Journal. In 2014, she received the Advocacy Leadership Award from the U.S. Clean Energy Education and Empowerment Program, run by the U.S. Department of Energy and the MIT Energy Initiative. And I honestly can't think of anything more important at this point in time than tackling our climate crisis. So with that, we'll hand it over to Dorothy.
Well, thank you, Pam, and thank you, Women for Kansas, for having me virtually. I'm in Hutchinson today, which is where I live. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Climate and Energy Project and our work. I'm going to share some information about the current federal energy policies and how they are impacting Kansas, and then also share a little bit about what's happening on the Evergy front and what we expect there with new generation. I'll talk just a moment about the importance of free and fair elections, and then just be happy to answer any of your questions. So I want to check and see, can you hear me okay? Perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I saw a thumbs up from Susan. Does that mean louder, or does that mean you can hear me okay?
It means you're great.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of people that I saw online come in. Mary Fund, many of you know Mary, is one of the Climate and Energy Project's board members. Super excited to see Mary here. Mary, we have a board meeting on Wednesday, so I'll see you then as well. And Helen Hands. Helen was a part of our wind energy task force that we hosted a couple of years ago. Happy to see Helen here as well. For those of you who don't know the Climate and Energy Project, we are a C3 nonprofit. We operate across the state of Kansas. We have 9 employees. They all happen to be women. Very dynamic team based in Hutchinson, where I live, Kansas City, both sides of the state line. We have some team members in Wichita, and we also have a team member in Pratt. So, you know, I think we do a great job of representing, you know, rural and urban voices across the state. The Climate and Energy Project started in 2007 as a project of the Land Institute, which some of you may know, in Salina. So we've been operating for nearly 20 years. And our vision is a healthy and resilient Kansas with flourishing communities, equitable access to clean energy, robust civic participation, and policies that protect our people and our planet. Our work really comes in 4 buckets. We work to increase community resilience, to reduce climate risk. We work to foster civic participation through engagement and leadership. We also work to drive clean energy solutions, and we actively monitor and respond to legislation at the KCC and at the State House that could have an impact on any of these issues. Are you seeing my slides move?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So some of the things that I think are important for you to know about the work that we do is really around our values. We have integrity in every project that we undertake. We also utilize a science-based approach. We make sure that we are providing transparent communications, and we really have a commitment to sustainability, both caring for the environment and local communities and having intentionality around our partnerships, and also the courage to support innovative solutions and climate action. Being a climate advocate these days is not for the weak at heart. And so that is something that we really focus on. I want to talk to you about the current energy policies that we're seeing coming from the federal level, and how it is impacting Kansas. I think the best way to characterize the current administration's energy policies are a strong emphasis on fossil fuels and a rollback of support for renewable energy. Those are going to have multifaceted impacts on our state. We as a state have emerged over the years as a wind energy leader. We were ranked fourth in the nation for wind energy production. We have nearly 50% of our current power comes from wind energy. We are have the second highest wind potential in the United States, with an estimated 952 gigawatts of possible capacity. We really could be poised to be an exporter of clean energy. And so I think it's important to think about what we're seeing: rollbacks of renewable energy incentives, increased funding for fossil fuels, and the impacts that are happening. We're seeing projects cancellations and hurdles. The administration's actions, such as the cancellation of a major wind farm in Idaho, and new requirements for what they're calling capacity density on federal lands, creates a challenging environment for large-scale renewable energy projects. A direct example of that for Kansas is the Department of Energy's decision to yank a $5 billion federal loan guarantee for the Grain Belt Express. That is an 800-mile transmission line that's designed to carry 5,000 megawatts of wind or solar from Southwest Kansas across multiple states. We believe that this is a direct attempt to halt wind and solar development. Additionally, we're seeing tariffs on solar components, and those tariffs on imported solar cells and modules has been noted to most harshly affect nascent solar markets, including those in Alabama, Nebraska, Kansas, and the Dakotas, making solar energy much less competitive in these regions. While solar currently makes up only a small portion of Kansas's energy mix, 0.14 in 2024, the state has an extensive pipeline of planned utility scale solar projects, including that total nearly 11 gigawatts. And those are all in jeopardy. You may have heard of the accelerated tax credit phase outs. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act significantly shortens the eligibility window for federal tax credits and production tax credits for both wind and solar projects. This rapid phase out compared to previous schedules directly impacts the financial viability of new renewable energy developments in Kansas. If you think about one of the most recent projects, there was a Kansas Sky solar project that Evergy is building in Douglas County. And although that project was approved by the Kansas Corporation Commission, it's possible that if they can't meet all of the requirements of the federal government, that will not move forward. Kansas was not a Solar for All recipient, but if that's a project you've heard of, it was $7 billion. It was a grant program to help low and moderate income Kansans put rooftop solar on their homes. Without that money, it's going to be nearly impossible for residential low and moderate income Kansans to go solar to help with their bills. I think the other thing that is really important to think about are the projected economic impacts that we're seeing. Analysts suggest that the average Kansas household could see energy cost increases by nearly $210 by 2030. And more than $670 by the year 2035. This includes a projected 7% increase in residential electricity prices within the next year due to a slowdown in solar and wind project construction. Some estimates suggest a 15% increase in utility cost for Kansas families due to the elimination of the renewable energy tax credits. I'm not here to tell you that wind and solar make our bills go down. But what I will tell you is that wind and solar offer free fuel, free wind power, free solar generation. And so they keep our bills lower than they would otherwise be. If we're not buying Wyoming coal or shipping in fossil gas for gas generating facilities, we really are going to be hurting more than we would otherwise. The other piece is job losses and reduced investment. Kansas has seen significant clean manufacturing investments, over $4.6 billion. Years ago, it was the Siemens Gamesa nacelle plant in Hutchinson, where I live. Recently, it was the Panasonic plant in DeSoto making electric vehicle batteries. Jobs for clean energy are over 5,000 in our state. The One Big Beautiful Bill threatens these gains by adding restrictions to advanced manufacturing tax credits and clean energy tax credits, which incentivized U.S. sourced materials and promoted domestic manufacturing. One report estimates that these tax credits could lead to 5,250 job losses in Kansas, 420 annual income loss for the average household, and a $600 million decrease to our state's GDP. The solar tariffs alone have been linked to a loss of over 62,000 U.S. jobs and $19 billion in new private sector investment opportunity. The impact on our energy supply is great. The Kansas Corporation Commission recently projected that peak energy demand in Kansas will reach 11 gigawatts by 2043. But currently, we only have 3.8 gigawatts of current capacity, meaning we need over 7 gigawatts of new power generation. Changes to the clean energy tax credits put planned projects such as the Sunflowers Boot Hill Solar Project, which is 150 megawatts at risk. So now that I've given you the economic news, I'm sorry to have to also bring you the projected climate impacts. The national increase in greenhouse gas emissions projected under the Trump administration's policies will contribute to and exacerbate existing climate change impacts in Kansas. So we've already seen temperatures rise about 1.5 degrees in our state since the early 20th century, with greater warming in the winter and in the spring. Under a higher emissions pathway, which the administration's policies will facilitate, Kansas is projected to experience historically unprecedented warming, potentially increasing temperatures by 6.7 to 15 degrees by the end of the century. So by 2050, Kansas could see 4 times as many days above 100 degrees, posing health risk. Drought and water scarcity are a key factor that we will be facing in a high emission scenario. Summers are expected to become increasingly hot and dry, intensifying future droughts and increasing the frequency and severity of wildfires. Drier soils and decreased river flows will increase the demand for irrigation, further depleting the High Plains aquifer system, which has already declined by over 25% in many parts of the state since 1950. Droughts and heat waves pose a significant risk to Kansas's agricultural economy, a leading wheat producer. Higher temperatures can reduce wheat yields, causing plants to mature too quickly and decrease water absorption. In 2023, nearly 2/3 of the Kansas wheat crop experienced extreme drought, leading to low yields and almost 30% of planted wheat acres being abandoned. Livestock may also be affected by more intense heat waves and water scarcity. And at the same time, extreme precipitation and flooding are going to be an issue. While summers may become drier, rainstorms are projected to become more intense, increasing our risk of severe floods, particularly in eastern Kansas, which I know some of you have experienced. So in summary, the current administration's policies are expected to slow the growth of Kansas's robust renewable energy sector, leading to higher cost for our residents, potential job losses, and a greater resilience on fossil fuels. These changes will also contribute to increased greenhouse gas emissions, intensifying the already observed and projected climate impacts on our state, including rising temperatures, more severe droughts, and increased risk to our state's vital agriculture sector. So what's next? We know that we're not going to be able to, in the near term, do much about the federal policies. We think that there will be some projects that get built by the short turnaround time. Currently, wind and solar developers are looking from guidance from the Treasury Department about how they can still utilize and the tax credits and for how long. So that guidance is supposed to come out next week. So we'll know more after that point. The couple of technologies that fared well in the OBBB Act include battery energy storage technology. And so we think it's possible that we will see more batteries being installed at large scale wind farms or at whatever solar arrays end up getting built, because those will still be financially viable. The other technology that received special tax treatment that's not a fossil fuel is geothermal. And there are some spaces in Kansas where geothermal technology might be feasible. And so that's something that we're keeping our eye on as things move forward. I think one of the key things that is important for us to think about is our opportunity at the KCC. So for anyone who may not know, the KCC stands for the Kansas Corporation Commission. and they are our state's Public Utilities Commission. They are in charge of the investor-owned utilities in Kansas and some of the cooperatives. They tell Evergy what they can build, what they'll be reimbursed for, what their rates can be, what kind of programs they can offer. They also regulate fossil gas, but most of our work with them is around electricity. The Climate and Energy Project, along with our partners, worked really hard over the past year and a half to help Kansans have their voice heard around the 2 gas plants that Evergy wanted to build. We worked really hard providing information, letting the commissioners know how people felt about building those fossil gas plants, concerns about the impact on our rates, the impact on our environment, the impact on climate. And unfortunately, despite lots of public comments and robust opposition, the Evergy did approve 50% ownership in 2 different fossil gas plants for Evergy. Those are supposed to come online, one in 2029 and one in 2030. The good news around that is that when the KCC put their order out, they were very specific about Evergy's requirements to diversify. They told Evergy that the commission will expect Evergy to demonstrate its serious consideration of less capital intensive options like demand response, utilization of surplus interconnection sites, and grid enhancing technologies. This directive really does signal a significant shift away from over-reliance on large centralized plants. And so demand response, the KCC is pushing for programs that will help customers reduce their electricity use during peak times, which effectively lowers the overall demand of electricity and reduces the need for additional new generation or the operation of expensive gas peaker plants. And I'm happy to talk more about that in Q&A if that's something that you all are interested in. The other thing that they said was that they wanted more grid enhancing technologies. And what that means is doing a better job of utilizing our existing grid, optimizing the grid, getting technologies like advanced conductors, which can increase grid capacity and efficiency without having to build a whole bunch of new stuff. The KCC commissioners, 2 of the 3 talked extensively in their order about their concern for the rate hikes that just keep coming. And these things are ways that the commission believes they can avoid some additional expensive build out of mainly fossil gas. They also mandated that future predetermination filings. So that's what this gas plant was a predetermination filing. What that meant was that Evergy got permission to go on ahead and start building these plants. But the commission, they will still have to come back to the commission and ask to be made whole or to get all their money back. So they said specifically that Evergy has to explore all both supply side, which is sort of the behind the meter technologies, and demand side alternatives. And that they shouldn't just assume that because they approved these gas plants, that the 1,600 megawatts that they are planning for 2031 will be a done deal. So from our perspective, we will continue to advocate that the KCC follow its own orders and really require examination and conversation and technical hearings around these technologies. The other thing that we think is really kind of what's next are some things that you all were talking about earlier with the impact of the court of the courts, the Supreme Court. We think that free and fair elections are what is going to matter in the coming years. The Climate and Energy Project really has been involved in civic participation and get out the vote for a number of years. We most of the time just include that information with our regular programming. But because of where we're seeing the attacks on democracy, the attacks on our ability to vote, both at the state level, things like losing the 3-day grace period, it will really be a key part of our work going forward. We are part of a couple of different collaborations that focus on free and fair elections, including REAMP, which is a network of Midwestern states that are all working together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our 9-state region. But we really believe that if we're going to have the kind of ambitious climate action and transition to clean energy, it is absolutely linked to the integrity of our democratic process. We have to have accountability for elected officials to make sure that they are accountable to constituents who care about issues like environmental protection and clean energy. We know that the electorate is not representative of Kansans. We don't have enough young people voting. We don't have enough people of color voting. And so we need to ensure that people who are most impacted by pollution and long-term climate impacts are voting so they can be reflected in the policy decisions. We also know that public trust in the electoral system fosters public confidence in policies that emerge from it. When people believe that their vote matters, they are more likely to engage with and support climate solutions. It is not a day goes by when I hear someone say, "Why should I go to the polls? My vote doesn't matter." Nothing that I care about is ever talked about. And so we are really going to be out there in front talking about climate, talking about clean energy, and really talking about ways for people to get involved. I didn't have time to make a slide on this, but I will send some information to Pam. One of the scariest things for me that's happening right now with this administration is the EPA trying to roll back the endangerment finding. That is something that goes right to your cartoon at the beginning, Pam. If we don't have that endangerment finding, then as this administration tries to prop up fossil generation, old coal plants, new gas plants or peaker gas plants, they will be able to pollute at will. We will see air pollution, we will see water pollution, all of those things impacting our Kansans' future, our health. And so the EPA is taking public comments on the endangerment finding through the beginning of mid-September. And so CEP will be holding at least one virtual workshop for people to learn about the endangerment finding and how they can weigh in. We were hopeful that Region 7 was going to do public comments in person so that we could bring a lot of people to the Region 7 office there in Overland Park, but it's all going to be virtual. But there are opportunities to sign up to make virtual comments, and then lots of opportunities to make a public comment to the EPA. And I think that's one thing that's going to be really important moving forward. That's all I have for slides, but I'm super excited to hear from you. I would invite you to follow our social media at CEP Heartland. Take note of my email address if you have questions. CEP is always looking for opportunities to talk about what's happening in Kansas. We're always looking for funding to support our work. You can find out more about that on our website, climateandenergy.org. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think the first question is, aren't other countries investing more in renewables? In other words, going the other way, even China? And aren't they also talking about criminal charges against countries that don't?
I have heard that there are some talk about criminal charges for companies that don't. I think from a legal perspective, though, and I am not an attorney, as I understand it, you have to be in those agreements in order to be held accountable. And we are no longer a part of the Paris Climate Agreement. And so I'm not sure that they'll be able to pursue any kind of criminal charges since we're not a part of the agreement. Yes, other states are continuing to move ahead, and it's one of the most contradictory pieces in my mind of the economic framework that this administration is putting forward. You know, why would we allow China to be the leader in electric vehicles, in renewable energy, in solar development, just because you have a personal vendetta against a particular technology, is beyond the pale in my mind.
Thank you. Also, Wendy Schrag said, I heard recently that the tax credits for residential solar are going away at the end of the year, and we've been thinking of putting solar panels on our house. So is this correct?
It is correct. The residential solar tax credit, which was 30% of your project, will only be available for projects that are installed and operational by December 31st of this year. And so you have a short window to do it. I am fearful that what will happen is that folks will hurry up and try to get their solar panels installed and maybe not look first to the energy efficiency of their home. One of the things we always tell folks is, you know, make sure your home is as energy efficient as possible before you put solar panels on. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a much larger system and wasteful energy use. And so the other piece that's going away is residential tax credits for energy efficient roofs, for energy efficient HVACs. All of that has to be installed by the end of this year as well. So, if I were looking to make investments that were going to make a big impact, I would look first to my insulation, making sure that my home is as insulated as possible, and then leaky windows, leaky doors, before I would jump onto a solar array, if you're able.
Thank you. That was good. Mary Fund asks, what is the time frame again for EPA public comment period on endangerment finding?
Mary, I didn't put a slide in there. I think it's September 15th, but I'll have to confirm that. I didn't read it this week.
Okay. What can you explain a little more about how geothermal works?
I can't. It is not a technology that I have done a lot with. And so I can't. I'm learning, but I don't know enough to share with you all yet.
What does the KCC see as the reason for the 11 gigawatt projection of energy need by 2033? Data centers, AI, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. Data centers and AI is what they're looking for. But also, despite the fact that the administration is trying to squash clean energy and electric vehicles are pretty far down the path. We think that will continue to grow slower, but it will continue to grow. So there's going to be that need. I also think that one of the things that we anticipate is with the fossil gas generation, and I'm sorry, I just can't call it natural gas. That is a fossil fuel talking point. It is not natural. There's nothing about it that's natural. The methane from it is just as bad as anything else. It's just as bad as coal. So fossil gas. Gas is a commodity, and the price of gas it's purchased, and whatever the utility companies pay for gas is what they pass on to us. So look at your gas bills, and you're probably still paying for the exorbitant amount of gas pricing from Winter Storm Uri a few years ago. If we become over reliant on fossil gas for our electricity use, and projections for liquid natural gas, LNG, are projected to go up, it's really a supply and demand issue with gas. And so we expect that the more reliant we are on fossil gas, the higher our bills are going to be, our utility bills are going to be, and very, wildly high. And so we think there will be a lot of people who are trying to switch away from gas to electric. So that could have an impact on the 11 gigawatts of growth as well. But primarily it's data centers, which are needed or wanted for AI. AI is another, and data centers are another whole issue that CEP is going to be spending a lot of time on in the coming months and years. One of the things that we are seeing in some states that are similar to ours, Utah, Georgia are a couple that come to mind. And when I say similar, I mean politically similar. They have investor-owned utilities like we do. Legislation is being pursued in a number of states that will not allow the data centers to will not allow the utilities to put the cost on ratepayers for new data centers. And instead, they're requiring the data centers to bring their own energy. And some of the states are saying, bring your own clean energy. And so we anticipate that will be a big issue coming forward. If we can't stop the data centers based on the water usage, based on other environmental impacts, at least we should be focused on protecting ratepayers from increasing their rates to pay for these data centers.
Okay. What can we do as individuals to somehow see our elected officials, that we're not helping ourselves in the future here? I mean, they seem to ignore that.
Yeah, I think we do a lot of work with a group called the Environmental Voter Project. And one of the data points that they say is if environmentalists and climate activists are notoriously poor voters.
Mhm.
Most of the time, oftentimes, if you care about those things, you also are not a regular voter. And
Oh,
so
really?
I think it's important for us to, continue to talk to people about, their future, their grandkids, their children. Do you want a livable future for Kansas? Do you want a place where your grandkids can still live and not have to all try to go up north where it's cooler and there's water? We're going to have to continue to get people who care about these issues to go to the polls. The other thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bring it up during town halls. We're going to have to bring it up during candidate forums. We're going to have to ask, do you support clean energy? Will you protect a landowner's right to decide what to put on their land? Or, do you support climate action? What are what are you going to do about Kansas water usage? If we're not asking those questions at forums, and if we're not holding folks accountable during elections, then it's going to be hard. So talking to your friends and your family, making sure they're voting, making sure they're getting to the polls, trying to have some open dialogue about the things that you care about, that hopefully they care about, will, I think, be one of the things we can do from an election standpoint. We need to break the supermajority. We're going to be able to get things done in Kansas. We have to be able to break the supermajority. We have to be able to do that so that people will have to work together. One party or the other isn't going to be able to get anything done by themselves. We're going to have to break the supermajority so that everybody can work together.
Well, that would be nice. Last question I have is, can you explain a little more about how you could export renewable energy?
Absolutely. The Grain Belt Express is a perfect example. And so that line is to originate in Southwest Kansas, go north up to the top portion of the state, and then cut across and go through Missouri and go through Indiana and land over in Illinois, with places along the way for renewable projects to hook onto. And so that's one way to physically send power from one part of the state to multiple states along the way. That would be exporting clean energy. The other way is more of a virtual power purchase agreement. So let's say you are Target, which isn't a very good example because I'm not shopping at Target these days. Let's say you're Jack Daniels. I'm still drinking a little Jack Daniels. And you have a goal to have clean energy to meet climate goals. So you might buy credits, if you will, from a wind farm in Western Kansas. And when that power gets sold into the Southwest Power Pool, then you're helping to utilize clean energy from Kansas. So it's being exported. Might not be used right there in Kansas, but it's being sold and moved around through the Southwest Power Pool. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the Southwest Power Pool, although it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's pretty tech heavy, but I think it's important to know that most of the country is represented by something called a regional transmission organization. And in Kansas, throughout the middle of the country, there are 14 states that are all part of the Southwest Power Pool. And all of our utilities are members of the Southwest Power Pool. And the Southwest Power Pool's role is to ensure that throughout this 14-state region, there is power being balanced all around. So if there's a really windy day in Kansas and there's a lot of wind flowing onto the utilities transmission systems, and suddenly that power the wind stops, so there's not a lot of wind, someplace else within that 14-state region has got a lot of wind. And so they're doing a balancing act where they're making sure that the right generation is operated to make sure that the lights stay on in all 14 states. So that's one piece that is very important that they do. They have a huge facility where you walk in and it's all filled with screens, and they're looking at every generator, whether it's a wind generator or a gas generator, and they're monitoring second by second how much power is being moved throughout the region. They're really interesting. The other piece that they have is a market. And so utilities have to say, hey, I've got 100 megawatts of wind that I know is going to run tomorrow, and 100 megawatts of coal, and 100 megawatts of gas. And so I'm going to bid that all into this day ahead market at the Southwest Power Pool. And then based on what is the least expensive, that's what the market is going to choose. And then all of the other generating sources have to come in at that same price. And so it's a very technical and interesting process, but it's supposed to ensure that we're getting the lowest prices for our energy cost, because it's not just based on what's happening in Kansas, it's based on what's happening across this whole 14-state region. So.
Except for Texas, right?
Texas is not. Texas has its own grid.
Yep.
Called ERCOT, which for Texas was problematic during Winter Storm Uri. They couldn't get power from all of those other 14 states within the Southwest Power Pool because they are their own island, if you will. California is the same way. They have the California ISO. And so there are more and more attempts to be able to move power between the regions. But it's tricky because if I'm going to build something that's going to benefit Kansas, the way that those are paid for, if it's just a small line that Evergy wants to build, then I, as an Evergy customer, am going to pay for that. If it's a bigger line that's going to support not just Kansas, but maybe Kansas and Nebraska, then there's a bigger cost share. Or if the Southwest Power Pool says, look, we need these big transmission lines to be built because they're going to benefit the whole region, then the whole region of the 14 Southwest Power Pool states pay for it. It's hard then to say, okay, now you're not in our Southwest Power Pool. Who's going to pay for it? Are the people in the Midwest Independent System Operator or MISO going to get as much benefit as the people in the Southwest Power Pool? And if they're not, then, well, they don't want to pay for it. Well, we don't want to pay for something that's only going to benefit them. So there's a lot of back and forth to try to get what they're called seams agreements, so that they can move power between the different regional transmission organizations.
Oh,
Wow.
that's crazy shit.
It is a little bit crazy. And if
Yeah.
you could ever go, oddly enough, the Southwest Power Pool's operations center is in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is not a part of the SPP. Arkansas is not one of our states. So
Weird.
Dorothy, I had read that the Grain Belt Express was going to move forward. It will just be more expensive. Is that on the up and up, or?
that's what the company Invenergy, who owns the line now,
Mhm.
has said, is that they plan to go forward. And I believe that they probably will, as long as the administration doesn't throw up another roadblock.
Mhm.
The thing that I will say I've been a little bit disappointed in, and I've seen this not just with Invenergy, but with other companies as well. You know, for decade, that line has been proposed for almost as long as I've been with CEP, and different ownership and different things have been happening. And, you know, it was always about clean energy. It was always about moving wind and solar. And I have heard the company say recently, well, we can hook gas up to it. You know, we can hook this other thing up to it. And in my mind, that's just to appease the administration. And you know, well, if we say we're going to let fossil fuel on, then maybe they'll like us better. and they're not. I mean, that's disappointing to me that they would acquiesce to the administration to say, well, yeah, we'll just do fossil too, if you don't like our transmission line. So
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. One more quick question. Up at Fort Riley, I know they invested in a lot, the Army invested in a lot of solar on all their housing for the troops. So what is that nationally? Because the military has been pro renewables. Are they trying to do that under the radar still, or is that just all gone?
yeah, that's one place we haven't heard much from.
Mhm.
You know, they're not going to take down the solar panels.
Right.
You know, they're not gonna do that. But at one point, the military had a directive that they needed to be able to, at all their bases, I think it was 4 days, 4 to 6 days, they had to be able to operationalize everything. If there was a national, or if the grid was out, they had to have the water, they had to have the electricity, they had to be able to run everything. And, you know, I sure haven't heard Pete Hegseth talk about anything having to do with those plans since he's been on board. So I don't know where the military stands. We do know that historically, the military has understood how impactful the climate crisis is to, you know, the world that we're living in, you know, climate migration, worldwide droughts, all of the things that are happening that impact what the military has to deal with, impacting climate. They've been very open about that in the past under a lot of different types of administrations. But I haven't heard anything with this new administration.
No, maybe that's good. It's under the radar. And
Perhaps.
Pete's too busy erasing women and people of color from the military. So anyway,
Yeah.
If there aren't any other questions, Susan, can you think of anything? Oh, you're muted.
So sorry.
That's okay.
I feel like I've peppered you, Dorothy, with so many questions, and I really appreciate your insight on this.
Yeah.
I really do. I think
Amazing.
I've learned a lot.
Yes.
Well, I would encourage everyone, sign up for our website,
Yes.
climateandenergy.org. And as opportunities to weigh in on these issues with either the KCC or at the legislature, please feel free to reach out if you have questions. We'll do our best to keep folks engaged and, help you see kind of what the future is. And I have to continue to believe that all of the good work that so many organizations across the state are doing, including Women for Kansas, are going to make a huge difference as we move forward. And, I think that the helping people figure out ways to make their homes a little more efficient so that they're not as impacted by the utility rate increases is going to continue to be a really important part of our work. And as we go forward in that planning, love to continue to keep you all informed of, new programming and opportunities to stay engaged in this important work around climate change and clean energy.
I will say that we've already had this is our virtual chapter, which we meet monthly. We have other chapters all around Kansas, and one of our other chapters said that they want to either have you out and talk to them, or what might help be more, it's just to play this. So I hope I have your okay to have recorded this, and our
Absolutely.
other chapters can use this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
For once,
Absolutely.
I remembered to ask Susan.
Yeah.
And oh shoot, was that what I just think
Boo
of?
Hoover. Boo Hoover.
Yeah. The information. And you're going to send some stuff to me, correct, to forward on. And we had a very good virtual program about how to do testimony. So I will send that out to everyone again to review, because this is extremely important. And we need to be doing this.
Yeah,
So
I'll send you some information on the endangerment finding and how to put a public comment together for the EPA. I think that you can sign up to make a Zoom comment if you want. If you want to be on screen and make a comment directly to the EPA, I think there are 3 days in August that hearing will be going on. Or if you just want to submit a written public comment, you can do both. So we're putting together some materials around that. I'll send those your way. And then also let you know when we get a webinar together that will help provide some background and some additional information.
We've also had a request to, if you could provide your slides to the people in attendance, that would be great.
Yep, I'll send them out to you
Good.
with the endangerment finding information.
And
Probably
several
won't be
people are thanking
until
you.
probably won't be till a little bit later in the week since I'm gonna head to Tulsa shortly, but I'll get those out to you. Lou, thanks for your support. You've been a great supporter of CEP. And you know, thanks Carol and Sil. Hope that this has been helpful for your committees. And I appreciate all of you and what you're doing.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. This was
Absolutely.
fantastic. And I know you've got to get on the road, so we'll wrap.
Thanks,
this up.
everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. And look for some information that'll be coming a little bit later,
Thank you.
Bye.